Andrew King III here, but you can call me Andy. Welcome to King's Comics, where today we are going to discuss something that we've got to get on the table, a real hot button issue, which is what are my rankings of all of the DCEU films, of which there are 6 right now. This is kind of a hard thing to talk about because the state of the DCEU is not great. Some wouldn't say it's good. Some won't even watch these movies, let's be honest. But I will. And that's why this is important, because it matters to me, and it matters to you, and because it matters to me and it matters to you, it matters to me. That being said, let's go to number 6, which is going to be Suicide Squad. And honestly, this was neck and neck with my number 5 choice, but we gotta face the fact that Suicide Squad, don't get me wrong, it was an entertaining movie by a lot of opinions. I just did not enjoy it that much. The only elements I enjoyed, to be honest, were Will Smith's take on Deadshot, as well as the portrayal of Amanda Waller in the film, who is one of my favorite characters from the Justice League animated series.
And if I were you, I wouldn't probe the situation too closely, rich boy.
Overall, this was really a mess of a movie just because David Ayers, the director as well as screenwriter, did not have a lot of time to write the film. There were a lot of reshoots, as far as I understand, which is kind of sad because this is the dude that directed End of Watch, which is one of my favorite movies. It's a great buddy cop movie with a lot of grit and realism to it. But he didn't get to see any of that directorial ability as well as acumen in Suicide Squad just because of, I guess, timetables as well as a lot of the clutter going on in the film. Coming in at number 5 is Justice League. I'm going to be honest, this was neck and neck with Suicide Squad for my least favorite film of the DCEU, but I flipped a coin to pick which one was going to be number 6 and which one was going to be number 5, and this is where we landed. It's actually kind of ironic because that's how I got 5th place in a track meet I was going to in middle school. Either way, I digress. Justice League had a lot of potential, but they rushed so much of the film, and what's funny is the marketing to begin with was kind of portraying or indicating there were going to be 7 members of this film, where they were saying unite the 7, which kind of worked for the Aquaman posters because he's trying to unite the 7 seas, but we also didn't get to see any of that in the movie because all of that is fleshed out in the Aquaman movie. That being said, there were a lot of different interesting things going on behind the scenes, such as unfortunate personal events going on with Zack Snyder's life, and as well as the fact that Joss Whedon had to step in for the reshoots as well as final cut editing. So there was a lot going on, a lot of different weird character interactions, such as Batman all of a sudden becoming the comedic relief, especially after this very grim, dark portrayal of Batman in Batman vs. Superman.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
But that being said, it was just kind of a mess. It had so much potential. I don't necessarily like a lot of the redesigns for some of these characters, but at the same time, I was really hoping this movie shocked and awed a lot of people or surprised, but it was not what I was hoping for, even though we did get to see a lot of foreshadowing as well as allusions to the oncoming of Darkseid as well as the presence of Green Lanterns in the DCEU.
Stand back and peep the light show. Green Lantern's got this!
Number 4 is Batman vs. Superman. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start by saying one thing the MCU, I know I'm bringing the MCU into a DCEU ranking, one thing the MCU has done really well is using a lot of no-name characters or previously no-name characters like Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and making $1 million, if not kind of approaching billion-dollar films out of these characters. Whereas the problem I take with that is the fact that when you have a movie starring Batman and Superman, as well as having both of their names in the title, there is no reason why it should not be one of the top grossing movies of the year, if not of the decade. However, this was not the case. I mean, even Captain America beat it. All of the Avengers movies have beat it. It just did not have a good enough fan base or a good enough pull to really beat any MCU films. There was a lot of messiness with trying to include too many characters at once. You had Wonder Woman come into the fray, which could have really worked if she weren't forced in alongside all of the foreshadows to other DC characters, which wasn't bad. It just felt like it was rushed last minute. Especially with Doomsday being the main villain. Doomsday has a very interesting and awesome history in the DC universe, but we didn't get to see any of this because it ended up just being Zod's resurrected body or something like that. I don't know. But I gotta admit, the reason why I ranked this at number 4 is because I really enjoyed the portrayal of Henry Cavill's Superman as well as Ben Affleck's Batman. Call him Bat Affleck or Ben Batfleck. I'm gonna stop. Either way, this movie had a lot of things going for it that I wish just culminated in a better film, as well as a better foundation for the DCEU moving forward. Number 3 is, oh man, please don't let me get too much flack for this one, Wonder Woman. I know, okay, listen, I wanted to rank it higher. Wonder Woman was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I love Gal Gadot's portrayal of Wonder Woman, of Diana, as well as this backstory about why she kind of turned her back on humanity, lost faith, and was just laying low during the events of Batman vs. Superman. I really enjoyed the world building surrounding her involvement with World War I, as well as her character interactions with her whole motley crew of people and Steve Trevor. I thought some of the romantic elements were a bit rushed, but I still enjoyed seeing that classic tale of Steve Trevor and Diana Prince being together, even if Steve Trevor did die towards the end of things. However, that may not be the case with the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984, which I still think is another ambitious direction for the DCEU to take. All in all, there were so many things going right for Wonder Woman, but I still had to place my number 2 above it, with number 2 being Aquaman. Once again, this was a hard choice to make, and it's possible that I'm placing it above Wonder Woman just because I've seen it so recently. However, I just really enjoyed the amount of care that went into making Aquaman. It's clear that so many lessons were learned from past DCEU films that it all culminated in Aquaman just being a fun, enjoyable movie. You had this beautiful portrayal not just of Atlantis, but of these different kingdoms as well as Atlantean or ocean-dwelling sea folk. We even got to see the trench dwellers, which are based out of Jeff Johns' run on Aquaman in the New 52. And honestly, they are some of my favorite. It's kind of hard to call them villains, but they are some of my favorite creatures in the DC universe just because they're so terrifying and strange. Moving on, Aquaman had a lot of strong points. The romance between Thomas Curry as well as Atlanta, which seemed a little forced to begin with, to be honest, and rushed, was actually really quite endearing. The fact that he was going out on the pier waiting for her, there was a lot of just very fairy tale-esque moments in Aquaman that made it a little bit more lighthearted, but in earnest rather than being forced, as well as just having some very awesome action scenes, such as him fighting Orm, also known as Ocean Master, as well as Orm's kind of change of heart towards the end of things, and Aquaman being reunited with his mom. There were so many things I just enjoyed about this film, and it just made me light up to see it brought to screen, and I really hope that anybody who hasn't seen it yet gets a chance to go out, see it, make your own opinion. I've got a review posted for it, but no spoilers there. It's just a good film. And finally, coming in at number 1 is Man of Steel.
Very poor choice.
Hear me out. Man of Steel was the initial tone, the path that was chartered for the DCEU. It's what Zack Snyder had envisioned for the DCEU. Heck, he even took cues from Christopher Nolan, going forward from the Dark Knight trilogy. And I personally believe that this would have been a great path to follow if they had just been more consistent in following that darker tone in Christopher Nolan's portrayal of Batman. And Christopher Nolan even produced these films, so that was kind of clear in just some of the story elements, how very much sci-fi-esque it was, as well as a lot of the darker narrative and realism surrounding Superman being an alien, his involvement on Earth, him discovering his powers. There were a lot of things I really enjoyed about this movie. And I understand that people kind of bash and trash this movie, but I feel that it had a lot to offer the DCEU in terms of a path as well as tone if more directors as well as those behind the scene had stuck with it. Not saying that I didn't enjoy Wonder Woman and Aquaman, just more so that for Batman vs. Superman, there was a lot more world building that could have been done and fleshed out throughout the entire movie if they'd made that commitment to sticking with what was established in Superman in Man of Steel.
What's the S stand for?
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
And there it is. Those are my rankings for all 6 of the DCEU films. This was pretty hard for me to rank, and I think the only thing harder than this is going to be my ranking of the 20 MCU films, but I have enjoyed the parts of the DCEU films I've seen. That's to say that there are some DCEU films that, yes, I might not like overall, but still have some redeeming qualities. This shows that Warner Brothers and DC overall has the ability to make good films as well as direct these awesome character interactions as well as portrayals, but it's going to be a little bit of work regaining that viewership trust. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm Andy King, and this has been another episode of King's Comics. If you have any suggestions or feedback, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Please drop a line down below. Once again, I do read it. I do try to respond to the best of my ability, so I'd love to hear it. And if you liked what you saw today, please, please, please hit the like button or even the subscribe button. I'd love to see you back as well as in the comment section and try to produce and tailor more content that you're wanting to see. We got a lot more rankings and videos coming up as we sprint towards the finish line in 2018 and approach 2019. So please stay tuned in, and I'll see y'all next time.